Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson, but he's the star of the show, Joel Sherman. Today is Sunday, April 6th. The Yankees lose in extra innings to the Pittsburgh Pirates, but take 2 out of 3, Joel, against the Pirates. They also lost 2 out of 3 against the Arizona Diamondbacks since the last time we spoke to you. But before we get to any of that, breaking down both those series and what's going on with this Yankee squad, I got to ask you, how you doing? How you enjoying your Sunday, sir?
Good. A little bit of a catch-up Sunday. I try to take as much as today as possible to do some of that, but I was writing my online column when you reached out, and now we're doing this on a Sunday. So not, a little busier than I thought it was going to be, but good, good. Hopefully lots of people will
Good.
watch because I'm sure there's lots of interest in the Yankees early this season, right?
There certainly is, Joel, and I think the storylines. I mean, they're going to keep coming, but there's some ones standing out right now that I really want to hammer with you. But I want to start off with first pitch. Like I just laid out, 2 out of 3 against the Pirates. Had a chance to sweep them today after Trent Grisham's heroics in the ninth inning to tie the game. They don't. They fall short. Devin Williams comes in, doesn't get the job done. And then the Diamondback series was a weird one, right? They were up in that first game, and Mark Leiter ends up coming in later in that game. They blow that one 7-5, and they end up losing 2 out of 3 because they get destroyed in the second game by Zach Gallen. So, what were your two takeaways you would say from both of these series that stand out to you?
Yeah, they've opened 6-3. If they play like that all year, they'll win the division. I would keep in mind that as we're speaking right now, I'm not sure anyone else in the division is even over 500. I think maybe the Red Sox are at 5-4 and playing the second game of a
Correct.
doubleheader later today. But other teams have gotten off worse than them. And one of the things to keep in mind, I know this is kind of like the issue when you talk to fans, is close losses seem to stick with fans much worse than losing 10-1. But the reality is, like, I remember Billy Bean telling me this like 30 years ago. You know what a good run differential is? You win a lot of games and you win a lot of games by a lot of runs, and you lose. And when you lose, they're close. And so the Yankees, I believe, have lost 3 games. And if you think about losing as, did the other team need a save or a walk-off win? Then it's usually a sign that you're playing close games. You probably, by average, win 50% of those. And I think the Yankees have either been in a save situation or in all their losses, or they've won them. And the other thing that tends not to get remembered is the games where they come like roaring back to win. They get melded. They don't feel as good as the ones that, for the fan again, the losses sting. So, I think they've gotten off well. I have a suspicion when you set this up and talked about what we're gonna, like the listeners should know, we don't really pre-plan this. I kind of follow you wherever you go. The Yankees' two issues coming into this season to me were questions about the starting pitching, number one, two, and three,
Yep.
and a little bit about how they do against lefty pitching. And I think in general, though there's some level of concern I would have against the lefty pitching, they've done very well. And we should talk about it more if you want. Uh,
Yes.
but the starting pitching is a concern, especially because you're in this situation where, on one hand, you could say Clark Schmidt is one more rehab start away from rejoining the rotation. On the other hand, they feel like they're one more starting pitching injury early in a season away from having real issues. If I was going to highlight one thing, of the 30 teams, there's one team in the major leagues through this weekend who does not yet have a quality start, at least 6 innings and 3 earned runs or fewer. That's the Yankees. Now,
Yeah.
the team
Yeah.
that's leading the majors in quality starts is the Cincinnati Reds, and they suck. So, like, what I'm saying is like you don't want to,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, you don't want to burn out a bullpen. And the other
Hmm.
issue to just think about structurally is, if you do not start getting length and some quality length out of a rotation, you have to set up a bullpen to have multiple guys who could cover multiple innings. And as guys like Ian Hamilton, who's really a one inning guy, comes back, or Tyler Matzik, who just began a rehab, if they come back and you have to send a Brett Hedrick out, or you can't keep a Andres Gomez on the roster, it becomes a little trickier to cover bullpen innings if all you have is a majority bullpen innings. So they need especially the Fried Rodon starts, they need those guys to give them 6, maybe even 7 on occasion to allow what you know is going to be problematic innings from the other guys.
No, I think it's a great point by you, Joel, about the lack of length about specifically those two guys and what they've gotten thus far. Because it has been, I think, something that's emerged with this team is the bullpen's been taxed. They've been throwing a lot early. I heard Michael Kay on the broadcast today say, to Jack Leiter, like, this is a lot. They're throwing these guys a lot of innings because Will Warren gives you 4 innings today. Marcus Stroman can't get you through the 5th inning yesterday. So the length you're not getting from those guys. I mean, Carlos Carrasco, you're kind of happy with whatever you get, even if it's like 4 innings of solid 2-run ball, because you do think that you have enough on offense to be able to bash other opposing teams. I think that's a good point though, Joel. Like, that's something that was different from last year, right? Like, the starting pitching was the big surprise at the start of the year. How much quality you were getting every single day, and you were able to give the ball every fifth day to the different guy, and he was able to give you some good
Yeah,
length.
the reason the Yankees won the AL East last year was they won the division to me over the first 2.5 months of the season. Uh, their ace missed that period of time, Garrett Cole. Luis Heel, who was the replacement for Cole, essentially made his rookie of the year bona fides in that first 8 to 10 weeks of the season by pitching a lot like Cole, and giving the Yankees kind of excellence. And every guy was going 5, 6 innings. And it was allowing the Yankees to kind of use the relief pitching the way they wanted to, an inning at a time to cover, say, 9 outs. It's the modern game. You really can't expect starters to get you much more than 6 innings, but they were getting 5 or 6, and on occasion, even 7 innings with some regularity last year for those first 2.5 months, and they were getting it from everybody. I guess the good news and the bad news, if you're a Yankee fan, is the fewer innings Stroman throws now, the tougher it will be for him to get to 140. Uh, which
That's
is
what
a
I thought too.
devilish little tightrope to walk, because on one hand, especially while Schmidt and Heel are out, the Yankees need Stroman to pitch well, and pitch with some length. He needs to be the third kind of prime age veteran who gives them 15 to 18 outs. And we're seeing again, he is a guy, he lives with secondary stuff. He lives on the corners, and if he's not getting strikes on the corners, he is a very hittable pitcher, especially by lefty batters. And I'm not sure that the quality of stuff we're seeing early this season makes it through a year.
I would agree, Joel. I thought that was a little alarming yesterday. He couldn't get through the jam that he was in. You would have liked to have seen him get 5 innings. It just Do you think there's a mind game at all there a little bit with Boone, or he had seen enough? Like, I don't mean by Boone, but like the front office, like, all right, he gave us what he gave us, or is that more like, I've seen enough today, I can't throw him back out
Yeah,
there,
look.
throw him back out
Yeah,
there.
look. I would assume the Yankees have an overarching plan that, short of if it would cost them an actual playoff spot, this guy's not getting to 140 innings. And you could regulate that, right? There's a time you could go to a 6 starter. You could make sure out of the break, the guy doesn't start until the 5th or 6th game. Off days, he gets pushed back, all that. It's not that hard to do if that's your overarching thing. The Yankees are in the winning business, and early in the season, they're not going to count innings when they desperately need them from Stroman, right? Because you could even play the game with full health. And where do the Yankees sign up for that? We know they're going to acquire a star. At this point, it's obvious they're
Yeah.
gonna need a starting pitcher. They'll be lucky if they only need a starting pitcher at the trade deadline, one singular, between now and July 31st. If they were to have full health, which by then is Schmidt, Heel, Rodon, Freed, the odd man out's going to be Stroman. Like, he has the least stuff of that. And so the Yankees could get away from the Stroman business and 140 innings and not deal with a grievance, because if they were fully healthy, they could make a case, well, we're releasing this player or putting him in the bullpen because we have better guys. But again, where do they sign up for that? Because that means full health from, guys you didn't expect. And that was the other thing that worked so well for them last year that you can't ignore. While Cole, their most important starter, went down, the other 5 guys mainly stayed healthy while he was down. It was almost like Schmidt went down a little before Cole got back, but not that, those 6 guys started, I think, 153 of their 162 games. Uh, the likelihood that they're gonna get that kind of health again, we already see is not likely, but it's just how do they limit it to what it is so far? Schmidt for a short period, Hill for a couple of months, and Cole for the season. I mean, they really need 60 starts from Fried and Rodon as a cornerstone bedrock to this. And by the way, where would they have signed up for 20 to 25 good ones from Stroman? We could talk about like Stroman saying, I'm a starting pitcher or like whatever. It's like, man, they need you. Like if you want to get to
Yeah.
140, you want to assure that 18 million for next year, you've got to pitch well and make yourself hard to take out of games and take out of the rotation. If this is the stuff, Ryan, I don't not only do I not think he can make 140, I don't think he can make it a full year in a first division team's rotation.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, what of note, what you just said there, Joel. So, do you think, let's say Schmidt does make his way back, and Heel makes his way back, and this rotation is going with those two guys in there now? You believe Will Warren is going to be that guy over
No.
Marcus
I
Stroman as
mean,
the fifth
like, that's
starter?
a lot of time from now to then. I also don't believe they'll stay healthy between now and then to actually ever have to make that decision. It's like, do you remember early in spring training, I just said, Boone's never gonna have to make a Stroman decision. Like, where it was like, "Hey, is
Yeah,
Stroman a starter or not?" Like, he ended up the
it always works its way out.
he ended up the number 3 starter. Now, he hasn't pitched like a number 3 starter. If he pitches like a number 3 starter, he'll answer his own questions. Uh, I think the people you know me, I always like to talk about Yankee personnel with people outside the Yankee organization, and I will say that the people who have been down on Will Warren have always said to me he's a relief pitcher, that he'll be fully exposed if you go around a lineup more than once. And in a way, today was the classic example of that. He goes 8 up, 8 down to begin the game, then unforgivably in some way walks the number 9 hitter to begin to set up
Yep.
his little bit of a downfall in the 3rd inning. But it's then the second time around the lineup, he looks like a much more vulnerable pitcher than the first time. The hope for him was adding a changeup, a little more confidence in delivering the stuff
He
of it.
didn't throw that change up
Right.
much
And
today,
so
man. He
so
was
so is he a relief pitcher masquerading as a starter for a team that needs it? And again, one that has there's a little bit of a mystery. Who's the next guy up? Like if it's not if Schmidt were to have a setback and they had another injury, who are they calling on to
it ain't JT Brubaker. He's on the
right?
IL.
And Chase Hampton got hurt if they wanted another close to the thing. So is it like Eric Leal, who I think they found in the Mexican League? Could he be kind of like their miracle story this year? Or, it's Alan Winans. Again, if you talk to scouts outside the Yankees, it isn't exactly like they're lining up and thinking like Alan Winans is a good idea as a major league starting pitcher. So they're
Would they go to Ryan Yarbrough maybe
maybe,
for a spot start?
but is he stretched out enough to even give you 9 outs, in a game? And so, but to your point, this is the problem, with all this is they're very, very, very thin in this area. And I I look, this is a veteran front office that has done a lot of good work over the years and knows how to operate. And, I'm reminded that like the year they traded, and I'm going to push everybody's memory back to now the late 90s. They made a June trade, I believe, for David Justice when they badly needed a lefty bat. I'm going to say it was 99. And uh, I don't think the Yankees will hold back. There is no mystery here. There is zero chance that they're not going to need a starting pitcher. Zero. Again, where do they sign up for only needing one? And so the first time they hear one they like that they think they could get, there's some dreadful teams out there. The question is, do any of those dreadful teams even have somebody who you'd want?
Right. That's the question, Joel. You again. I think you've brilliantly highlighted the big thing. I think that stood out from the first week and a half, 2 weeks of the season is the starting pitching and the lack of length that we haven't seen. Real quick, David Justice, June 29th, 2000, right
Yeah.
on the dot, almost on that July spot there, but June
Yeah, they
29th,
jumped out.
June
Yeah, they
29th,
jumped out. It was
2000.
kind of obvious they needed it. Uh, this is not, whatever they'll say publicly, you know, Ryan, it's overt. It's overt
Hmm.
how what a little danger zone they could end up in with one more starting pitching injury. And it's just if it becomes available, I don't think that they'll hesitate. But by the way, like everyone will need it. Uh 10 days ago, we would have said, you know who's overstocked with starting pitching? The Los Angeles Dodgers, right? But what's happened? Blake Snell has ended up on the injured list. Tyler Glass now has pitched terribly. Sasaki hasn't shown he's got any length. We're still waiting on Kershaw and Otani. Uh, it's like funny, right? Because there's that cliche, and it's one of the ones that's true. You never have enough starting pitching. I mean, the Dodgers felt this way last year, and if they would have lost the World Series, it was because they were running out of starting pitching. And so, with everything the Dodgers spent on starting pitching in the offseason, would you be surprised if they were trying to acquire a starter? The Baltimore
No,
Orioles, who
no.
still have a strong farm system, they're going to be in for a starter. If the Red Sox are in it, I expect they'll be in for a starter. So teams with perceived better farm systems than the Yankees are going to be there. And the other 29 teams are not in the business of doing the Yankees favors. So it's like if you actually, like if there were suddenly some, I don't want to do it for the aggregators, but
No, don't do it for the aggregators,
like
Joel.
a
Don't do it.
rocky starter suddenly was somebody that everybody liked. All right, like why would the Yankees get him? I mean, maybe because they'll
Yeah,
get somebody along the way, but
correct.
like if you're going to pay June prices, the trade deadline is already inefficient for the buyers. You're already usually paying $1.25 to $1.50 at the trade deadline to get what you want if it's something good. Now it's if you do it before like the All-Star game, you're probably paying close to $2 for a dollar worth of talent.
Tariffs at all play into that effect at all?
We're gonna go into a field that we don't like, and
No,
and
no, we
and if you
don't. But
talk about
you
what
open up
aggregators will pick up, I don't wanna play that game.
nope. I just you
Yeah.
cracked the door open there a little bit. We're talking $2 on the dollar. Joel, let's real quick. I do want to ask you about Rodon. His velocity was ticked down a little bit in his last start. Do you think that's doing to the cold weather, or should there be a little bit concern there about
Yeah,
Rodon? About Rodon.
look, I think there's probably some pitchers who could pitch with lower velocities. There certainly was a lot of Luke Weaver concern in spring training and probably even after his first outing about he is down about 2 miles an hour from his average last year, and he has some craft about him, so he's still getting hitters out at a pretty good rate. Does Carlos Rodon have craft? I wouldn't put him into my front group of people who I think are crafty starters. So he needs velocity. Uh, so if it's down, that would be a bad sign. And look, part of the thing was the Yankees have already lost a key part of the season beyond the obvious that when you lose Cole, you're losing one of the best pitchers of the era, is the idea of putting Cole and Freed together with the upside of Hill was to lower the responsibility pressure on Rodon. Now, Rodon is the opening day starter, and you're saying, dude, you must get us 18 outs a game and hand the ball to the bullpen with a lead. And so he's not the guy I'd want to put that way. The Yankees were doing everything they can to extract weight from him. And now the weight is fully on him. And it wouldn't be if I were in the Yankee front office, it would not be a comfortable feeling for me.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't as a fan watching just the and they kept bringing up the broadcast again. His velocity's down a little bit, but then he worked his way through some of the damage, but wasn't a great start overall. It's been a little bit up and down with Rodon the first two starts, and to what you're saying, they're relying on him big time here because of the way that the injuries have impacted them to start the year. And they're going to need to rely on him continuously through these next couple of weeks until they can get Schmidt and Heel back to help alleviate a little bit of that. But he still has to be the guy in that rotation besides Freed. Joel, let's move over to Do Up. I do have three players here, again, to put a list together. Three contributors on the offensive side of the ball. I thought these were three positives this past week,
Should
and
I?
I wanted to see,
So two of them are going to be Grisham and Rice, right? And
yes,
so my
who's the
third would
third?
be Volpe. Is that your third? Yeah.
Yes, you nailed it.
I'm learning how to think
All
like
three,
you.
Joel.
Who do you?
Yes, you're learning how the crazy fan
Yes.
works, right?
So who do you want me to start with?
Well, so the three contributors again to your point. Trent Grisham, his offensive surge. He's hitting 471 with 3 home runs, 9 ribbies in the month of April, including the two RBI single again today versus the Pirates to tie up in the ninth. Volpe's power surge. He had another 2 home runs versus the Arizona Diamondbacks series. He's up to 4 this year. Is that going to be a key part of his game? And then Ben Rice, leadoff. He batted 286 with a 546 on base percentage, 974 OPS on the 2 games this past week that he led off. Is he potentially their new leadoff guy versus right-handed pitching?
All right, why don't we do a little one at a time, just because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Though I think there's a big overall issue, which will always be how do they do against lefties. Okay. So
Hmm.
let's start with Grisham. And why don't we have 24 weeks left of the season, but I'll offer a mea culpa on Grisham to this extent. I did not understand why the Yankees tendered him a contract. And let's see if I could. I remember thinking in the time there were four reasons for it. Let's see if I can remember, or I'm going to have my early onset moments here. So, number one is he had a bad year last year, right? Just didn't play well. Number two, he kind of has that laconic style that I think fed into the issue about the Yankees about like inattentiveness on as an overall team that I thought was bad. Number three, he's left-handed, and the Yankees had begun to swing heavily left-handed. And if you were gonna have an extra outfielder, the value of having a right hand hitting outfielder was more valuable than that. Uh, and number four, if you're living in a House Steinbrenner age of counting pennies, then his $5 million I thought could have been redirected to something that they might have needed more righty hitter, a starting pitcher, etc. Now, 2 weeks from now, he might do an 0 for 18 and well, whatever. But, value is value when you need it. Right now, he is helping them survive not having Giancarlo Stanton, right? Because the key thing Giancarlo Stanton was going to bring was a bat against lefty pitching at a time where there was concern. And it's easy to forget because he wasn't good against lefties last year that Grisham actually hit lefties pretty well for a lefty hitter while he was a Padre. And he's done it again early this season. And Dominguez has a long way to go to prove that he can hit lefty pitching. I think he's 1 for 16 against lefty pitching. So I think even if they get back whole with Stanton, we have thought, oh, the Yankees need a right-handed caddy for Dominguez. It might be that Grisham is the quote unquote right-handed caddy, but just hitting left-handed. If he's going to hit lefties like he has early this season, he's got 2 homers off of lefty pitching. I think he's hitting like about 500 off of lefty pitching. The big hit that ties the game this afternoon is off a lefty on a day where they had a lot of trouble against lefties at the beginning and the end, right? Heaney and their end game with a couple of guys. So uh I think that's done it. He improves their overall defense when he does play, right? You have him, Bellinger, and Judge, pretty good outfield defense, right? If that's going
Damn
to be
right.
your outfield defense, guys, fly ball pitcher like Rodon, kind of helpful as well. So he has had a role, and he falls into that category we talked a lot about, Ryan, a month ago, which is stuff happens in spring training, and you're like, I don't know what it means. Well, he began spring training hurt. He had a hamstring injury, but once he got in the lineup, he played great, and that hasn't stopped 9 games into the season. And if he performs 80% of this, that is great value as a 4th outfielder, especially at a time where they're trying to survive the loss of Stanton. Um, Volpe, uh, I still look, if he's gonna hit 30 homers as a shortstop, that's great. Maybe the bat design is something that is giving him a little extra lift and distance to do that. I still think there has to be a use the whole field part of him that gets on base. We're seeing the Yankees are a lot more athletic this year, and
Oh yeah.
that has helped them produce some runs. Even though the great majority of their offense is still home run generated, it does
Most in baseball, 25 homers
it
this
does
year.
help that when you need to generate a run, they have a little more ways to produce it. And I think drawing walks and getting some base hits still needs to be part of this if he's sacrificing too much to just go for power. But obviously, positive. How long does he extend it? We saw the roller coaster last week where it would be 3, 4 weeks of really, really good, and then 3, 4 weeks where it would look like, do they need to send him to double A? So, and by the way, part of the good last year was the first like 15 days of the season got him moved to leadoff, and then he moved to leadoff and fell apart for a while. So, need to see more, obviously, to feel that way. Ben Rice was a guy who I think somewhat early in spring training, I mentioned Yankee people think he's a 5-hole hitter. Um, I think he hit a little leadoff last year because he's a guy, you know, this was the Austin Wells thing last year we went through. When process is good, results usually follow. And Ben Rice's process is good. He knows what a strike is. He generally swings at strikes. And he added muscle this year, and he's a guy using the bat. And so if a guy is swinging at strikes and hitting the hell out of it exit velocity wise, that will generally lead to good results. He though and Wells, they've popped a couple of homers against lefties, but their at bats are just way different at bats against lefties than righties. And we're seeing it. The team that has faced the second most lefty pitching this year is the Yankees. And everyone's going to do it.
That's a stat, Joel.
I believe that the Pirates used 4 lefties today, right? The starter and 3 of their relievers were lefties. This is the game. Like until
Yep.
Stanton comes back, and if I was going to say, what's the second thing the Yankees are going to acquire between now and July 31st? It's going to be a right-hand hitter who plays third base or the corner outfield or can move around quite a bit and has a track record of hitting lefty pitching because while it's been good early, you see the problems with Dominguez and to some degree Rice and Wells. And that's kind of like stacked in the middle of their lineup often and gives a real runway for an opponent to bring in a lefty to go after them.
Yeah. To your point, Joel. Rice batting 154 with a 214 on base percentage, a 599 OPS compared to a 1.542 left hand versus right handed this year to start the year through the first 9 games. He didn't play today, right? So he didn't really face Andrew Heaney.
Right.
He didn't have the opportunity, but through the first 8 games, if you want to say it that. Um, I agree with you, Joel, across the board. I think you made a very good point about Trent Grisham. If you get 80% of what he is currently, you'd be in love with that. I am interested, like you said, what happens over the next month or so. If they get Stanton back here soon, does Grisham become more of an opportunity versus left-handers? You get more playing time over Jason Dominguez, and they don't give him as much of that runway. And then the Volpe factor. I'm with you, man. I got to see it for more than just 9 games. Got to see it for 2 months in the year of you tearing the cover off the ball before, as a fan, I can say, have we finally seen the arrival of Anthony Volpe? Until then, it's just a tease right now. If anything,
Yep.
Joel.
Like, if we would have done an all-star game 3 weeks into last season, Anthony Volpe would have been the starting shortstop in the American League, I think even over Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt. But the season's gonna last longer than 3 weeks, it's gonna last more than 9 games, and Volpe's strength has been durability, that guy post, and pretty good defense, but the full flourishing of offense, I don't want to go like this if he's actually going to get to 30 homers. That's a big deal. But I think if it comes at the expense of him being a good overall hitter, that overall that would not be a great thing for him and the Yankees. Homers are the most valuable thing you could do on offense, but it's not the only thing, and it shouldn't be the only thing in his suitcase.
Yeah, I mean, there are some stats out there to suggest that Volpe is swinging harder than ever. He's swinging almost harder than he was his rookie year, where he did hit 20 homers. So you do wonder if that's part of his approach now, if he's swinging harder than ever and trying to make the power part of his game and a big part of his offensive game. But that was due up, Joel. It was good. I was good. I appreciate that. Real unreal. Yankees have hit 25 home runs already this year. It's number one in baseball. The power surge has been incredible. Aaron Judge, we know what he does. But do you think that this could be actually real and that the Yankees are going to be again a power hitting team, even with the loss of Juan Soto? The fact that they're getting all these other power hitters, like our numbers from Grisham and Rice and Dominguez, can they get enough from all those guys and Jazz Chisholm, obviously, to be a power hitting team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they'll clear 200 homers again, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got to 250, as long as Judge, so much of this is can people stay healthy in general,
Yeah.
especially Judge. And look, I think it's probably way too much to ask that Stanton come back and come back well. But if he comes back and comes back well, we're talking about another guy who we saw what the when he's using the bat, what it looked like last October, right? And so, he's a force in the middle of a lineup if he's sitting there. And I do think he's going to try to come back. But the thing I can't get out of my mind is he has consistently said that even coming back this year, he must play in pain. And he's a player who, because of his size and strength, breaks. I don't think it's a preparation thing. I don't think it's a care thing. I think he prepares and I think he really cares. I think that guy desperately wants to be part of a champion. I think he'd love to hit 500 homers and at least give himself a shot at the Hall of Fame if that would help it. Uh, I just think he breaks because he is so strong and does everything with such force. And it's almost inexplicable why it doesn't break Aaron Judge, who's maybe just built, we're all DNA, whatever, genetics, but it breaks Stanton. And so I don't like you can't ever like the Yankees shouldn't be like, oh, we got Stanton back. We don't need to get the righty hitter. You do need to get a righty hitter because you just if Stanton's able to stay healthy. And by the way, I think they're gonna and this always gets misinterpreted when I say I think they'll take another shot at LeMayu, does not mean I believe that DJ LeMayu will succeed, right? But they're paying him 15 million this year. They still owe him 15 million next year. You know, like at this point, it would probably cost Pablo Reyes his roster spot. They're going to take a look at it, right? They're going to take a look at that
Yeah.
one more time to see if that right-handed bat could even be league average. Because a league average offensive bat there, especially against lefty pitching, would matter.
Yeah, I mean it would, and it would help that lineup, and it would help lengthen the lineup. It wouldn't put all that pressure on
Yeah.
Judge, right? And for him to perform and Goldschmidt to be performing against left-handed pitching.
But the problem again
I
is
mean,
you go, Ryan.
no, no, well, I agree with you, but the problem is that I feel like and especially when you get into the playoff time and crunch time, if they face a tough lefty, it Judge has already faced so much struggles as it is, and for that pressure, the way the lineup is constructed, let's say they don't add that impact right-handed bat, I don't know if you can rely on the rest of these left-handed hitters to be able to do damage versus a really good
No, they're
lefty.
gonna need the diversification of the lineup eventually. But the other thing is, like, if LeMahieu came back well, which I would not put it more than a 10% chance, which for those who are math
Mhm.
illiterate means that I think there's well over a 90% chance that he'll fail before we get oh, this idiot thinks DJ LeMahieu's coming back and is going to succeed. The bigger problem is, even if he succeeds, the question I would ask is for how long? He has not shown that
Yeah.
his lower half can stay consistently healthy for over 3 years now. And so I think that it would just be like a little bit like Stanton, you could get suckered in on it. They must add a righty bat at some point. Now, I think that's not like a starting pitcher. That will be available. Like, you could start to see on the bad teams, there are right-handed bats who have some history on those bad teams of hitting lefty pitching. Again, I don't want to mention names because that ends
No.
up taking a life of its own. But that is not the problem there is hitting the guy, the right, no pun intended, the right guy, because you could end up acquiring Darren Ruff, like the Mets did, who had a good run up of always showing he could hit lefties and then got to the Mets and couldn't. So you've got, it's got to be someone you could really believe in and believe in New York and believe in against good pitching and believe in big games. And so there's a lot of homework between now and then. Uh,
Yeah.
but you still, that is get 'em. They're going to get that. When I don't know.
How much is this, Joel? And I know you talked about it before. How much of this depends, though, if let's say Jason Dominguez figures it out a little bit, and I'm not saying he becomes a power hitter, but he becomes a solid contact hitter and gives you, I don't know, like a 240, 250 batting average versus left-handed pitching, and can get somewhat on base for you and just be a little bit of a presence right-handed, and that will help this lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the problem is they have two switch hitters who both are bad from the right side, and him and Cabrera. And to think that it's going to get much better, again, look, they might solve this internally. Do you want to play the miracle game? Cabrera, who I think the world of. If he tells me he worked very, very hard at this during the offseason, I don't think it's just wordplay. I think he probably worked very, very hard at it. And maybe he'll get better at it. Maybe Dominguez, who's a very talented guy, will get better at it. Maybe Stanton will get healthy. Maybe LeMayu will get healthy. Maybe there's a little life in Peraza. So there are things on the Yankee roster that could happen to make them a more diverse, tougher team, especially against lefty pitching. The likelihood that any or even a majority of that happens is not, and it happens and stays healthy, because I believe if Stanton comes back, he'll hit. But
Right.
that happens and stays healthy, I think is not very likely. And so ultimately, they'll need an outside solution.
Yeah, I wonder, and I think that talent though is what makes Yankees fans starve for see Dominguez be a really good switch hitter, and if he could just figure it out from that right hand side of the plate, I think they'd be fine offensively, and they would be able to get back with Stanton. They would have enough from the right handed side of the plate. That just feels like that's the one you're waiting for Dominguez to just pop from the right side, and that would work out for them, especially if you get this from Volpe, or at least 75%
Yeah,
of this from
the
Volpe.
reality is Dominguez just also has not played a lot of baseball. And so with playing day after day, does this get better or does this get more exposed? It's an interesting thing to follow over the next 6 to 8 weeks. As you know, uh, I think that oftentimes front offices will tell you they think of the season as 40 game intervals, right? 4 game periods. The first 40 is you let what you did during the winter go and see if you were right about it. The next 40 is you begin to fix it internally if you have internal options. The next 40 is where you've got to go to the trade deadline, to the trade market and fix it. And the last 40, you're at the mercy of now what you've done in cumulative. And so I think we're still in that period where, like he's gonna let Peraza get a big at bat against the lefty pitcher late and see what it looks like. He's gonna let Dominguez do I'm talking about Aaron Boone. And
Yes.
because that's what the first 40 games is, the first few chapters of the novel, and you've got to kind of know for sure. See it with your own eyes, see it against major league players who are they're no longer spring training. They're trying to get you out, trying to win a game. And so I suspect for the first 40 games, we're going to get a lot of this. And then at the end of
Yeah.
40 games, they're going to look around and go, yeah, I know Pablo Reyes looked really good in March. That's not an answer. I know Peraza's out of options. That's not an answer. I know we love Dominguez. Like they'll just have to be honest if none of this works out.
Yeah, and the honesty will hopefully give them some solutions here. Joel, let's wrap it up here. Let's go to Joel's notebook. The Yankees are set to play the Detroit Tigers in Detroit. The weather is still very cold. They are now planning to move the night games to afternoon games due to the wind chills and the temperatures being below 20. So I got to ask you, in your long history of covering baseball, what's the coldest baseball game you've ever covered, Joel?
Yeah, so lots. And what distinguishes, say, Shea Stadium, City Field from each of the last two Yankee stadiums is the Yankees are one of the last. I'm not sure if they're the last complete outdoor stadium with an outdoor only press box. There is no covering in the press box at Yankee Stadium. So there's no like close the windows. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Again, I want to begin this by saying first world problems. But this stadium opened in 2009 and the heating, overhead heating, has never worked at Yankee Stadium. In fact, it makes it worse because it does two things. It generally blows cold air and or it drips. So somehow we have a still pretty new stadium where the heating has never worked. And I got to say that first year in '09, if you remember the ALCS in particular, but also the World Series, Yankees go late October. I think that series went even into November. And the
Yes.
ALCS games at Yankee Stadium, because again, I think something has been closed off in the time. There was like a little wind tunnel from right field right into the press box that first year. And I am one of those guys who believes if I'm not trying to win any awards here or get a freaking parade, but I think if your office sends you to cover a game, you should stick it out in the press box and not go inside and watch on television. Like we're there. I want to be my own director. If I want to watch the third baseman, I don't want to be at the mercy of the director of the game. I don't want to be sitting in a noisy little room where everybody, you might have people not paying attention talking about dinner, whereas outdoors it kind of gets blown away. So uh, I sit it out. I never go in, during a game. And so it gets cold in the Yankee press box in particular. And like, I mean, it was cold early this year in a game because it was cold outside. I'll tell you the coldest I ever was in a press box. So there's going to be one of these ones where you tell me how many years before you were even born this was, which will hurt my freaking feelings. But in January of '87, I was working at United Press International, UPI, and I was like our main college football writer, and I covered the Jets at home and helped on the NFL. And so I covered the Orange Bowl that year, which for UPI was a big event. So like it meant I was in Miami for a week through the game. The game, traditional New Year's game then, was played on January 1st. So I got my blood nice and thinned out for a week in Miami in the heat. I flew the next day to Cleveland, and the Jets in Cleveland are playing a playoff game at the old Cleveland Stadium, which the auxiliary press box where I was sitting, because I was the sidebar writer on that game, is outdoors on January 3rd of 1987 off of Lake Erie, where it could hardly be colder. And for any Jet fan who has nightmares and might want to remember, that's the game they have in control. But Mark Gastineau roughs Bernie Kosar late in the game, and the game, I'm freezing, and the game goes 6 quarters because then it goes to overtime before Cleveland wins. Ryan, it was so cold. I am not joking that I kept ordering hot chocolate because wait, I had you haven't got it. I had to write also radio copy for UPI, like, the Jets are leading 13-7 midway through the fourth quarter. Freeman McNeil has a touchdown. Ken O'Brien's 10 for 12, or whatever thing you're doing. So I had to keep my fingers outside. I couldn't wear gloves. So I'm writing radio stuff for 4 hours outside for this whole game because it goes 6 quarters. I was using the hot chocolate. I was pouring it on my fingers to try to warm them up. I actually got frostbite between 2 fingers at that game, and then flew the next day into Newark, got a cab to Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium, and covered the 49er Giant game, which was the first playoff game on the way to the Giants winning the Super Bowl that year. So I covered 3 games in 4 days, a college game in Miami, and 2 NFL playoff games, 1 in Cleveland, 1 at the Meadowlands, and the one at the Meadowlands I covered with frostbite on 2 fingers because I sat in an outdoor press box at Cleveland Stadium for 6 quarters. Was that TMI? Was that too
It
much?
says no. It says it was 32 degrees. The wind chill felt like 23, 12 miles per hour. Relative humidity 80%. Outdoors though. I've been there, man.
Outdoors,
I would just
off with the wind whipping
with the
into that.
wind.
I could tell you, we've gone too long here. Let's do a Joel's notebook on how disgusting the old Cleveland Stadium was for baseball at some point, because I could give you something that will actually make it sound like a horror movie.
I look forward to talking about that. We'll bring that back when the Yankees go to Cleveland next time. Joel, you're the man. Thank you as always for breaking down Yankees baseball for us. We're 9 games into the season, where this is the second episode of the regular season. And yeah, man, we're starting to learn some things about this team as they continue to play some games here. But appreciate you as always for coming on with us and talking
All
some
right,
baseball.
Ryan, all the best. And to the viewers, all the best.